Hello and welcome to a monthly gathering around the topic of flow. Flow, which you saw expressed in this graphic, this cover page that contains an interesting number of aspects about flow. When we hear flow, we think of, the very soft things it implies: go with the flow, be like water, give in to what is, etc., etc. But of course, there's also the active pursuit of directions, So are you the flow? Mary says, be the flow, That sounds sort of like, oh yeah, I'll just be the flow. What we often mean by what we think is meant by be the flow is more the go with the flow. Whereas be the flow really means the active and the engaged and the, what can I say to avoid the word passive, the going with, the going with the flow, which can be very active. Anyway, let's settle in where you are and follow with your sensory awareness the flow of your breath out. Okay? Follow the flow of the breath out. Allowing the exhalation to be as complete as it can be without you having to force anything. As complete as it can be without you chasing any of the breath out. And as soon as you feel the breath flowing out, if there's no notion of needing to get rid of anything, if there's really just a notion of I'm allowing the out-breath to be as complete as it can be right now, be very, very awake to any part of that flowing away motion that might feel like it actively wants to flow, even gush or rush like a waterfall, Again, not with a sense of you wanting to forcefully and emphatically push anything out or reject anything or get anything to move. Just watch your body's and your being's appetite for perhaps, while allowing a movement of a flow out, dance along with that with great enthusiasm, if there is any such enthusiasm, or with the gentlest kind of, all right, I can't be bothered to rush, but I'll trickle along. Just give yourself some moments here to settle in to just what quality of flow you can feel, or what qualities of flow you can feel in your exhale, in the melting of the shoulders out into the expansion, the width that is naturally theirs when you don't have a program running. The shoulders ought to go down. Who says? Shoulders want to be free, that's all. And then when shoulders are free and clavicles are free and you exhale and you allow the exhale to just be, what quality of flow from the slightest, most delicate trickle to the most intense waterfall is showing itself to you? This is something you can keep exploring for as long as you wish. And as you go back to this exercise throughout this month or however long you please, keep allowing yourself to be surprised by what aspects of flow show themselves. And for right now, right here, with the next couple of exhalations, see when you reach the end of the exhalation and you let the exhalation ebb off, that movement out and down, as you allow for there to be a pause where you're not quite certain, am I still exhaling? Have I subtly begun inhaling? Or is there neither present right now? Into that empty space we can sometimes consciously hold. Receive the in-breath that comes. Receive the in-breath as it comes. See what kind of inhalation comes to flood you ever so gently or ever so vigorously or in ever-changing, surprising ways. As you receive the inhalation, remember, no taking of breaths in Jin Shin Jyutsu. No taking a breath. No need to take what's yours to receive. So allow the exhale to be as joyously complete or subtly complete or anything in between that shows up. And then as you allow yourself to be emptied out by whatever quality of flow out shows itself, allow yourself then to open the floodgates to be filled with whatever kind of flow comes back in. That flow in and up, lifting you on the waves, lifting your spirits, possibly as the body expands with this new vitality and flow that enters. The fact that you are not controlling the intensity, you're not causing the intensity of the flow out and of the flow in. The fact that, on the contrary, you're allowing yourself to be constantly surprised by the kind of flow that presents itself doesn't in any way imply that you're just passive or even that you're just simply witnessing what is. Like in wild water rafting or canoeing, you're certainly not controlling the wild water in any way, the flow itself, but you're also not just allowing yourself to be carried along. You are perhaps choosing to allow yourself to be carried along, or to skillfully maneuver the waters as they are, the still moments, the vivid moments. Just be with that. Get a sense of the flow out that's always changing, the flow in that's always changing, and your relationship to it that will also be shifting to an extent from more actively engaged with relating to the flow that presents itself, and at times more passively espousing and even following the flow as it presents itself. As you keep experiencing what shows itself, what shows up with this exercise, you may be surprised to find it can at once be invigorating and calming, soothing. How can something be at once soothing and vivifying, invigorating? Well, the ability to simultaneously make you more alive and feel more vigorous while feeling softer and more relaxed teaches you a lot about the deeper and true nature of fourth depth. Your body can feel that way when fourth depth is really doing its job. Your mind can feel that way. And your emotional self. The fact that there's a lot going on, that there's a lot flowing, and that I'm very aware of the fact that sometimes the flow that is becomes quite intense and then quite smooth, and sometimes I just flow along, and oftentimes I'll actively navigate the flow, will give you a sense of just how actively engaged with life a healthy fourth depth lets you feel, while not giving you any sense of having to be constantly on the move, on the run, on the go. There is constant movement. Doesn't mean you have to be constantly on the lookout and the move and the attempts to control and all of that. Or conversely, that you also, the understanding that you don't have to exit the flow of life as it is, you don't have to exit the wild water in order to know something restful and refreshing. Inasmuch as you manage to be, well, one with the flow. If it's fast and you can go along with that, then there is no discrepancy and no fatigue and no sense of overwhelm. So there's a high art of flowing in such a way that you feel that the world is moving and you are almost stationary in the midst of that movement because you are riding it. Unless you choose not to stay so stationary, So there's a playfulness and a joy in this that's looking and waiting to be explored by you. Members will have noticed this was quite a different feeling exercise yet again from the one in The Life We Miss, from the meditation. And so there's a lot for you to discover there and to explore. Partly what came up today was already inspired and informed a bit by some of the questions that I got for today. So let me start right into those right now. I'll start off with Mario. Mario sent 2 emails. And Mario, what I've done is the correction you sent in your second email concerning the label you are asking about, I've incorporated into your first email. Okay, so I won't be reading both emails. I'll just mention, though, to everybody listening, the first email asked about nail fungus, and the second email corrected the vocabulary. So the second email made it clear that the Dutch term that Mario was that Mario had translated by her translating software was translated as nail fungus, which is a very different story than thickened toenails, which is what the question is about. I will answer both questions, because the question you didn't mean to ask, Mario, is, I'm sure, of great interest to a great many people. And I was just asked that same question a few short days ago in module 2 of my foundational training, 5 days with the depths, which I taught in Germany. So thickened toenails, and I looked up the German translation of the Dutch translation that you had looked up, Kalknagel in German, which literally translates as lime or chalk nail, but that term doesn't exist in English. It's literally thickened toenail. And when you look that term up in German, I didn't also check it in Dutch, but when you look that up on the internet, you actually get both very, very different situations, and lay people often confuse them. Thickened and hardened toenails, where it's just really the nail that thickens and gets very hard because it thickens, and it's often very unpleasant then because it's very, very strong and sturdy, and it can just dig itself into all kinds of unpleasant places, has nothing to do with a fungal infection. Okay, so I will get to the fungal infections in the nails later, because I think it's a subject worth addressing. But just to make it very, very clear, a lot of lay people, when they see thickened toenails, assume there must be fungus. There isn't, and it's actually not that difficult to tell when you look at it. So when it is simply, all right, I'll read Mario's question. Having substituted fungal nail for thickened with thickened toenail. Dear Matthias, I have a question about thickened toenails. I have heard or read that this is a sign or a form of protection by the body. Now, this seems accurate to me. When a toenail just simply thickens and hardens, it is a way for the body to protect, often against pressure from shoes, actually, but it could, of course, also be against pressure that is felt in other areas. I mean, more on a psychological level. Now that we are working on the 4th depth and with the emotion of fear and the bladder flow, my thoughts went to my little toes. Both have a hardened and thickened nail. The left little toe feels full and convex, and the right one empty and narrow with a sharp edge. I paid attention to this by asking myself questions. One of them was, what are you afraid of? I won't go into too much detail about this, but I did receive answers that I will work on. My question to you is, what can you possibly tell me about thickened toenails? See you Tuesday evening. So I think you're spot on, Mario. That, because it's still nail, there's no fungus involved, it's just the nail itself that's saying, oh, we need to produce. And the shielding function that the nails have is happening, but it's so exaggerated it turns unpleasant. So it does seem to me, because it's the little toes, it's very, very clearly fourth depth. Yeah, I'm holding up my little fingers, but we are talking about little toes. Little toe is where the bladder flow arrives and turns into kidney flow. So bladder flow comes down the outer edge of the foot, describes or draws or drafts the outside of the foot, and then develops the little toe, and then flows on as kidney function, flowing diagonally across the sole of the foot. So bladder has everything to do with energy getting down from head to toes, bringing clarity and balance, and the notion that there is room for everything. There needs to be room for everything that is a part of me. On the larger scale, bladder flow actually encompasses the wisdom and knowledge that there needs to be space in the world for all there is. Yeah, this is true within me, all that is a part of me, and not only the parts of me I really like need to be given their appropriate place. Of course, some more than others, some more visibly so than others, but what bladder flow deals with, among many other things, is does everything I am made up of have a right to coexist in a dignified fashion, so to speak. Yeah? Bladder flow spreads into from one line on each side into only one combined line, into two lines again, one on each side, then up to three lines, then back to two, then back to one. And it's one line from the back of the knee down that makes it into the little toe. So the basic notion is all that I'm made up of together and well balanced. Everything in the right measure makes it all the way to a dignified stand or stance on the ground. So that, yes, all of this can get out of the head all the way to the toes, there to inform the energy that says, now what? The energy that says, with now that everything that is a part of me has its place and dignity and recognition, what do I turn into next? How do I transform from here? How do I become the new, the actualized, the updated, never before version of me right now? That's kidney function energy. How do I come up with this core energy of renewal and reinvention? So when there is a stagnation between those two, where can't become, to express it wordlessly, yeah, when cannot just seamlessly turn into renewal and reinventing myself, there may be that kind of hardening, there may be that kind of holding on. Maybe that's the cause. Maybe there are other aspects. I'm pleased to read that you say you asked questions and got some replies that you won't go into detail about, which is very, very sensible. It's quite enough for you to know those and work with them sensitively. The suggestion is truly to work with bladder and kidney. And if I were you, I would do them for 40 days in a row at least. The idea behind the 40 days is simply that when your body and your entire energy system receives a message consistently for 40 days without an interruption, that provides very high chances of new neural pathways around the topic, around the new found baseline situation will be registered in the brain and in the body system, and that and that it gets stabilized that way, you know, that your system doesn't like remember there was nice information that came its way a couple of times, or maybe 5 or maybe 7 times, but then it just petered out, you know. It's good to stick with it for a considerable amount of time. The sort of time where the organism feels like, oh, we're always doing this, we're getting our daily dose of this. And I would recommend doing both sides, bladder and kidney, each day. And whether you start with bladder, then add kidney, so right bladder flow, for example, followed by right kidney, or left bladder followed by left kidney, or whether you do it the other way around, start with, say, a left kidney flow, which takes you over to the right 12, and then from there go into a right bladder flow. In the order of creation, bladder precedes kidney. So if you do bladder first, then kidney, you are going in the order in which the body is actually being built. Now, if you find that that runs into a blockade, that it feels like the bladder flow has nowhere to go because kidney is already backed up, then doing kidney first and having a free path for bladder to come through will feel better. Obviously, the way you find that out is by trying both. Just go with the one that talks to you most, that appeals to you most first. And then if that works just marvelously well, then go with it. Yeah. Just in case anybody had a question, after I gave the example of starting with a left kidney flow and going into a right bladder flow, there's no connection per se between left kidney becoming right bladder. It certainly doesn't become that. It's right bladder flow that becomes right kidney flow. It's left bladder flow that becomes left kidney flow. Left kidney flow then becomes right diaphragm flow, and right diaphragm flow becomes right kidney flow becomes left diaphragm flow. So the reason I talked about going from left kidney, which is little toe with pubic bone with coccyx, and then right 14, right 13, right 12, is now I'm already holding the first step of the right bladder flow. It's called the last step of the left kidney flow, but if I just apply my hand like this instead of like this, then I'm literally doing what Self-Help Book 1 by Mary Burmeister says on page 48 for the right bladder flow. So play with that. And because I said I would touch on the issue of nail fungus, of toenail fungus, I would like to briefly stress that once fungus has made it into fingernails and toenails, there generally is a deep systemic, in the strictly medical sense of the word, or physiological sense of the word, burden on the organism, meaning the whole system is already having a hard time keeping the biochemistry and the microbiome in a balance that allows the body to get rid of these things. Fungus is always there. This is important to understand, to stress. You don't catch fungus inadvertently by being in a place where there happens to be fungus. There's fungus everywhere. You know, yes, we hear these stories about catching it in locker rooms and public swimming pools and such. And indeed, perhaps sometimes there's a very large amount of those hanging around, and that adds to the chances that it'll develop in your body. But for the most part, I mean, on healthy skin, on the healthiest skin there is, when it's not currently being treated with antifungal chemistry, there will always be fungus, there will always be bacteria, there will always be viruses. Always. That's just what a healthy skin is made up of. We don't like to think of it that way, but that's just a fact. It's a microbiological fact, and there's nothing wrong with that. So there's an incredible amount of microbiome life, microorganisms, on everybody's skin and on everybody's nails. For the system not to be able to keep that in balance, for those microorganisms not to balance each other out in such a way that neither of them runs the show, so to speak, there has to be a deep imbalance in the system. And that deep imbalance does very often have to do with fourth depth, so it's very useful for everybody out there. It was not your question, Mario, but I'm glad there was a little translation error. I'm glad you cleared it up, but I'm also glad the error gives me the opportunity to address this issue, because in Jin Shin Jyutsu circles, one might tend, or alternative medicine circles in general, one might tend to have an attachment to the idea that everything must be taken care of with Jin Shin Jyutsu alone, or whatever alternative methods one has. And if with fourth depth and other tools one does get rid of fungus, even when it's gotten as deep as the nails, well, great. However, I think good self-care and a solid dose of kindness towards myself would command me to make sure that I am finding a way for my burdened system, that I'm heeding the call, that my system, my whole system, is burdened in a non-negligible way. If treating the nail locally really gets rid of it, which it often does when we treat it early on, that's fine. And if not, and if several nails are involved and whatever it is you're trying doesn't seem to make it better and doesn't seem to stop its advance, then I think it is worth checking with your medical professionals what medications are available. Now, some people are very concerned about the meds that you take internally against fungus, but again, like with all medication, once you tell yourself, well, this is terrible stuff, it's really tough on the liver and the kidneys, you have already poisoned yourself and you haven't even taken anything. I don't know what is available in the country of anyone who is listening. If you decide to take such medication, surely, and you are concerned, or your medical practitioner is concerned about kidney and liver, well, they'll find a way to regularly check your, do the blood work that checks how your kidneys and liver are dealing with it. Very, very often they deal with it well enough, but of course it makes sense to check that. Then, to use Jin Shin Jyutsu, please, 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 if you decide to take medication, do not make the medication your enemy. Medication bad guy, Jin Shin Jyutsu noble good guy to try help against bad guy medication. Don't ever do that to yourself, anyone out there under any circumstances. Rather know that if you have chosen a friend from this side of the spectrum, then there will be friends from this side of the spectrum that will help this friend truly show itself as a friend. In other words, use fourth depth then to evacuate any chemical components of whatever medication that needs to be eliminated by the body. Okay? So this is why I found it a welcome opportunity to talk about fungus. When fungus is deep in the system, what you have to know is that it keeps adding a burden to the system, the immune system, and so on and so forth, like chronic inflammation will. You know, it's just not the best self-care to let something like that just go on and on and on and on and burden our organism, which also ends up burdening mind and emotions, of course, right? So the main point is good self-care and kindness towards ourselves. Thank you. Next, Taj sends some feedback first, shares an experience. February's applied experience, the flowing forward self-correcting process. Taj picks up the headlines I gave the first 2 teaching videos in the February episode of The Life We Miss. A Way Forward is the title of the first teaching video, which looks at one aspect of the 4th depth, and the second teaching video looking at a different aspect, or the continuation of the first one, is called Course Correcting. So the flowing forward self-correcting process, Taj writes, this month I'm adding a consecrated piece in my meditation room. The process and requirements at first felt confusing and daunting. Inspired by this month's topic, I just took the first step and realized I had landed in the not knowing joy of flow. The not knowing joy, you know, the conscious understanding that I do not know where the path takes me, and that doesn't mean I resign myself to the path. I am then freed from any obsession with control. I am then growing up to realize that life is always that way, that none of us know what the next moment will bring. And I can actually enjoy my active role in the middle of such flow. A balance of focus, making decisions, and taking action. Again, Taj shares a balance of focus, making decisions, taking action. And then giving myself enough time to feel into those results, make adjustments, and then rinse and repeat. As I approach the initiation day, the momentum of this process is increasing. I have listened to the 3 teaching videos over and over and practiced the feeling and self-help exercises daily. This moving forward and self-correcting seems to overlap like a Venn diagram. I don't think I've ever immersed myself in the flow of a chapter of one of your courses quite like this month, pun intended, she writes. Thank you. Thank you. As I mentioned in the newsletter that I sent out to announce this month's content, newsletter you can sign up for under this address here, which I'll post again at the end of the gathering tonight. As I mentioned in that email, I had incredible fun recording 4th depth. There is so much that came up about the central topic of flow. I just had a ball. These chapters are so full. By the way, those of you who haven't seen yet, an excerpt from the 2nd teaching video, Course Correcting, a 5-minute excerpt, premiered on YouTube a couple of hours ago, and it's up there for any non-member to watch. Members, it's just a 5-minute extract from what you have, excerpt from what you have, all right? So, yeah, there is so much in that chapter. Now, for Taj's question, Self-Help Book 3, Experience. This month, I started reading Self-Help Book 3, not because I was too advanced for it before, but because I just couldn't understand her English, and I was too impatient to figure it out. Taj is an American native speaker of English, just in case anybody had a doubt here. So it's not, you know, this is a native speaker of American English who says, I just couldn't understand her, Mary Burmeister's, open the parenthesis, American, close the parenthesis, English, okay? Like a native speaker of German having trouble with my German, it happens. And I was too impatient to figure it out, so slowing down I began again. Since breathing and lungs are a pet project of mine, I decided to experiment just noticing my breathing, and once I was settled on that, seeing what happened when I did finger pose number 1 on page 10. The truth of the experience in the change in my exhalation was clearly noticeable. I'm so impressed with the fine nuances of my body. Now, the finger pose Taj is referring to consists of placing the palm side of your thumb on the palm side of your opposite side middle finger. So you hold palm side middle finger with palm side thumb, wrap the other fingers of this holding hand around the back of the middle finger. This, the book says, helps exhalation, and that's exactly what your body will confirm if you work with this hand. It exhales. It helps you exhale. It helps you exhale and experience exhalation in every way I hinted at the beginning of this evening's feeling exercise. Okay, so it's powerful, it's real, it's not something somebody made up. Mary almost annoyingly uses the acronym FUN over and over. Yes, yet it's been a fun time verifying the solutions offered in the book with my own experience. I will continue to make friends with the book. Well, as I liberally share anytime opportunity presents itself, when I first held Mary Burmeister's Self-Help Book 1 in my hands at age 20, I read it cover to cover in 40 minutes and thought, doesn't this woman know how to write? Or is she doing this on purpose? That's how little I thought of the book. I didn't care because I knew the flows in there, which the book was helping me remember, were the flows I'd been shown by my beloved teacher, Eileen Pasloff, and they worked on me, and they felt natural, and they felt familiar, and so I was happy to have this book, and not every book needs to be good or well written if the content is useful. And then came the next 4 decades, and I soon realized how well written in a very different sense of the word that book is, and book 3 as well. Mary's books in general. She writes her books in a way that is absolutely annoying to the Western mind, as long as the Western mind looks for linear explanations. And, you know, the way she works with putting things in all capital letters, and when she uses FUN, F-U-N, all capital letters, as an acronym, she actually means the literal thing she says. She means fun, isn't it fun? And she uses F, U, and N for fulfillment, understanding, nothing. So, as long as your idea of fun is this thigh-slapping, let's have another beer, make another coarse joke, feeling about life, well, then it's very, very far from fulfillment, understanding, unless by fulfillment you mean you fill yourself until you're full, but that, of course, isn't the meaning of the word, is it? But when she talks about isn't it fun, she is talking about an innocence of enjoyment that actually, and it takes time for us to dive into that and realize it, feels very fulfilling, brings a non-mental kind of, now I see, understanding, and brings with it no attachment to such understanding, and no attachment to, this must be fulfilling, in the sense of this must be extraordinary. If it isn't extraordinary, or if it isn't Disney, it can't be fun, you know? So yeah, almost annoyingly, I totally get you, I totally understand you. Until it's not. Until one feels that the most childlike, innocent, don't need a real reason of supposed profundity to enjoy myself, kind of literal fun. Being no different from feeling truly fulfilled with the simplicity of this moment's experience, and understanding something without the mind needing to get involved, but also without the mind needing to be chased away or denied its part in realizing, ah, that worked, or oh, look how that fit together. But then the mind is in its healthy position. It's in that place of, you know, my feeling self is busy doing its feeling and sensing. My body self is embodied self, and body self is doing its thing of being, sitting in the experience, and mind comes as the third step of saying, look how that connects. So that kind of understanding is fulfilling and brings no attachment. So that can be there. But there are layers and levels of understanding that are non-mental. And they can very much live in the same garden as the kind of mental understanding I described last. Okay? So, thank you for sharing all that. Now comes a question. First off, on page 6, the I am the star diagram, this. Which is the front of the arm and which is the back? Seems like a silly question, but which one goes over the elbow creases and which one goes over the top, over the joint point? So, indeed, when I read the question, I thought, well, certainly not a silly question, but it is pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? And then I took this old copy of Self-Help Book 3, my first copy, and I saw where the mistake is. In the English original, the text and the drawing don't go together. It talks about going up the front of the left arm. It talks about going down the front of the right arm. And maybe I misspoke on the first one, but you clearly can read the writing, correct? And where it says goes down, you see an arrow going up, and where it says goes up, you see an arrow going down. In some of the translated versions, I don't have the copy I grabbed earlier as I checked is a copy of the Dutch translation. So in the Dutch version, we simply changed the texts and moved this to there and this to there, flipped this around. So the description is accurate. The jumper cable energy flows up the front of the left arm, so then flows through the palms of the left hand, flows over the left fingertips and flows down back of left arm. The text is accurate. Yeah? And then down the left side of the back, and it goes through the solar plexus from back to front and goes down back of left arm, continues down front of right leg, goes to the toes, goes up the back of the right leg, and then continues that figure of 8 that diagonally runs from left arm to right leg to left arm to right leg, up front of left arm, down back of left arm, down front of right leg, up back of right leg. It makes it even easier if you trace it on your body. I'm showing it in the air. I don't have the distance from the camera to show you this on my body, but that figure of 8 is what the book describes, and that's accurate. And then the other jumper cable, another figure of 8 that runs diagonally through the body, is exactly opposite to this, exactly opposite. Meaning, as the book says, energy flows up the back of the right arm and to the fingertips, then down through the right palm, Up through the left palm we saw, now down through the right palm. Down front of right arm, from front of solar plexus to its back, down back of left leg, up front of left leg, up back of right arm, down front of right arm, down back of left leg, up front of left leg, up back of right arm. So you see, this is infinite and this is infinite. And they have exactly opposite directions. So we are told. I love it. I mean, left and right supervisory flows are absolute identical twins. They go down the front and up the back. Left and right mediator flows, identical twins. They are mirror images of one another. So, you know, each mediator goes up the back of its arm to the little finger, up the back of its arm to the little finger, down the front of its arm and wraps around the torso, etc., goes down to the leg, comes up to the opposite arm, thumb side, and then back down, etc. So this is symmetrical on both sides. My supervisors are symmetrical, my mediators are symmetrical. Only jumper cable energy, which isn't truly my energy, it's impersonal energy, is not symmetrical. So we are told. Now comes your next question. So, what are the implications, you ask? Or to read your text exactly. How does logic of the flow direction help us understand, remember, which to do for bleeding and splinters? Oh, actually that one's easy. That one's easy and I didn't come up with it. It was my colleague Waltraud Rieger-Krause who came up with that. You know, if you remember, left, jumper cable energy flows up the left palm, down the right palm. If you put your right hand down on the body and the left on top of it to help along, then the emphasis of the jumper cable energy is this. Yeah? Energy comes up, I mean, up from this viewpoint. It comes along the back or top of the hand to the fingertips and then flows around. So we can sort of easily imagine that it helps accentuate the pushing in of jumper cable energy, while this motion of the left hand accentuates the pulling out of jumper cable energy. What Mary made very, very clear is when we apply hands, the energy spirals in from the surface to bone level and then spirals back up and out. It spirals down and in and then up and out. Down and in, up and out, no matter where you touch and how you touch and what hand you do it with. But you accentuate, it makes sense to think, the down and in, if right hand goes to the wound, say the bleeding wound first, this gets accentuated, whereas you accentuate the up and out if you put left hand on the body directly and right hand on top to help. So then the up and out gets accentuated as you would want to do to pull out a splinter or pus or something like that. Makes sense? I thought that was an easy to remember image that I saw Waltraud give in a class of hers that I had the chance to attend a day of or so. Third, in the organ function energy, you described the flow patterns of the chest and finger flows, presumably the same on the right and left side. Absolutely. Every energy flow that is ours personally or individualized body energy is symmetrical. How does this flow pattern for the body jumper cable energy interface with the organ function energy paths? The answer to that is wonderfully simple. It doesn't. Because organ function energy as well as trinity energy is my individualized energy, we can, with some reason, call it my energy. Not so with jumper cable energy. That's impersonal energy. that just flows through the body, and the more I allow it to run its free course, the more amply and abundantly it runs, but those two levels do not interface. It's the safety energy locks, which we use to harmonize all three levels, the unmanifest, the manifesting, and the manifest. The safety energy lock, which, as its name expresses, is an intelligent mechanism of regulating energy flow. That seat of body intelligence, called a safety energy lock, converses with universal energy and its wisdom, so that the local expert, called a safety energy lock, is reminded how to do its job perfectly by universal energy supply. It is not my personalized or individualized energy flowing through my hands that effectuates that. It's the conversation that I, as a practitioner, facilitate. I hold the space for universal intelligence and local intelligence to have a conversation and find the body's and being's self-regulation again. Okay. Also, how does an understanding of the flow pattern for the body jumper cable energy function apply to practicing the safety energy lock or organ function energy lock flows? Well, see, there you go. That's the question behind page 11 in Mary Burmeister's text. 1. That page with the directionality of the hands, both Mary and Haruki Kato clearly said Jirmarai did not explain that page to them, and they therefore did not feel they were able to explain it to us. Kato added to that, and Jirmarai didn't work with that system anyway, but with a different one, which he then teaches. Whereas Mary said, you don't have to worry about that. It's all built into the flows. Just do them the way they're in the book. So my experience out of 4 decades of practicing is that, well, I always apply what's in the books when I don't have any major reason to depart from it. Major reason could include absolutely not finding a way to comfortably apply the flow the way it's in the book. It could also be that my body strongly and without a doubt tells me the hand wants to lie there in a different way. This is the moment when we need to remember that Jirmarai did not put down absolute laws, although students of his try to make it into that sometimes. The human mind just likes rules and regulations. So Mary constantly reminds us there are no rules and regulations. Mary consciously evolved from her 79 texts to her 89 texts and took the hand directions out of her illustrations, but some people now prefer using those hand directions again. I love that Mary offered a simplification, and my personal experience has been, while I know some people who firmly believe in duality, right, wrong, plus, minus, etc., Mary emphasized in Jin Shin Jyutsu there is no polarity. That sentence could not be plainer, it could not be simpler. She said, when talking about our hands, in Jin Shin Jyutsu, there is no polarity. Now, some people can't help but think in polarity, and then they seem to experience something I have never experienced, that the so-called wrong direction of a hand makes a huge difference. Now, there is always the possibility that I'm totally unsensitive and not aware of it. I sort of doubt that. I do think that our belief systems influence greatly what we experience or think we experience. But, you know, somebody has a system there that works for them. By all means, they should work with it. All I can tell you is I just flow with the flows the way they're indicated in the books until my body strongly tells me to do something else, and then I do that. Because to me, Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art, is a message I take very seriously. So, in other words, I can go by the book only until my embodied, grounded artistry tells me to do something different. Okay. Inspiration. In time, you will know the non-secret secret of the power that is in the awareness and understanding of the thumbs and fingers. All disharmonies can be harmonized through them. Page 4 from Self-Help Book 3, quoted by Taj. Looking forward to your next course. Taj is referring to the course that I will be offering July 1 through 5. As some of you know, the online study circle, which is currently featuring, to those who are still members there, the last chapters of The Life We Miss. Once The Life We Miss comes, once the March episode and the April episode have run, that will mark the end of that. And then we won't have a monthly study circle, but I will be offering a 5-day online course running July 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 hours each day. That will be called The Fingers and Their Safety Energy Locks. So it's actually not it actually doesn't address this sentence from Mary's self-help book, page 4. Instead, it looks at what do I feel like when what the thumb stands for is perfectly in harmony? What do I feel like when number 1 is in harmony, number 9, number 16, number 19, number 21? So in those 2 hours of the first day, we'll be going through what does harmony of the thumb feel like? What does 1ing in harmony feel like? 9ing in harmony? That'll be the first hour. And then we'll see, do we see parallels? Does it seem to make sense that the thumb supposedly harmonizes 1, 9, 16, 19, and 21? It's a lot of fun. And that course comes with, it runs for 5 days, and after those 5 days, it comes with 5-month access to the recordings. You'll hear all about that through the newsletter well in time, okay? Thank you for heating at it. Please talk about labels and projects. Oh dear, what time is it? We're already 3 minutes over. All right, I'll just keep going. Sorry, I'll just make this as brief as I can. It just seems ridiculous to let this wait till next month. A prominent person in a community of mine recently died. I googled his obituary, which said lovely things about them, listed the survivors, yada yada, and no mention of the cause of death. A day later, I learned he had some kind of health problem affecting his muscles that got worse over many years and made him be in a wheelchair. A day after that, I learned he had Parkinson's. I was stunned by the changes of bodily feelings I experienced through these 3 delayed expressions of the same event. With the first, there was a whitewash of all is well obliteration. I love that expression. A skimming non-connection, like something was being hidden in its missingness. With the second, I had a personal, compassionate, connected feeling. Second depth quality within me with reference to him and his family. Very nice. There was a sense of completeness. With the third, the label, I experienced a harsh depersonalization, a recoiling disconnection. I noticed I lumped him with the rest of the people I know who have or had Parkinson's, which sort of resembles a picture of hell from Northern Renaissance art. While these experiences are distinct and real for me, my language about them feels inadequate. So Matthias, with your gift for auditory clarification, and the fact that you've taught this in innumerable 5-day classes, I would love to hear anything you have to say about projects and labels. Let me start with projects, which you didn't address here. Very, very sober reasons Mary has for saying, don't consider it a problem but a project. She says, a problem feels like a mountain, a project is something we know we need to work on and can only work on step by step. So that's the very real thing. It's not think it's a problem, but please use Jin Shin Jyutsu speak and say it's a project. Yeah? Then, you know, if we do this, we keep thinking the same thing, but use a different word, that word then also very quickly uses its meaning and value. So she invites us to actively perform a change in thinking and say, what's the next thing I can do? Project rather than problem. Label very much correlates to what you are expressing. She is encouraging us to look at what's happening with the person. What's happening with the person total, not just, you know, the way it's described here with the symptoms of his particular journey with Parkinson's are being described, but the label, the recoiling of depersonalization that you talk about, that's something that Mary wanted to make us aware of, because once you are given a name of what you supposedly have, once you are given a label, this is what you tend to do with yourself, lump yourself in with everybody else who has that. And Mary wanted to emphasize constantly that 50,000 people may come to you with the same diagnosis. She always said, no diagnosing, no labeling, no curing in Jin Shin Jyutsu. And 50,000 people with the same medical diagnosis will have 50,000 different, distinct, individualized energetic states. And lest we lose sight of that, she said, remember, the diagnosis they give you is just a label. Look under the label, right? So that's what she meant. Okay, let me go on to Karen's. And at the end, there's a note from Else, which I will just summarize now, who is saying that the time has come for her to stop following teachers. She has been a student for many, many years and is conscious she will be a student for all of her life, of course, but right now it's time for her to see where things sit with her and stop following teachers. As grateful as she is for all of them, as much as she's complimented each one of her teachers for expressing the art in their own individual way, it's time for her to see what she will do. Maybe share the art in a way very much her own, and for now, stop following teachers around, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing here, and thank you, Else, for being here all these years, and all the best of luck with your onward journey. So let me get to Karen and her question and be brief. Dear Matthias, thank you for this invite. A theme that pops up for me related to the fourth depth is fatigue, the absence of flow it may encompass. My sense is that fatigue can relate to emotions that need digesting, a body that's wanting to cleanse and detox, beliefs and mindsets that are wanting to stretch into wider horizons, and a sense of self or identity that's looking to reset or come into a larger flow. In this context, I wanted to ask you more specifically about the fatigue flows. I am aware of the fatigue flow, the special fatigue flow, and the diagonal fatigue flow, intermingling of diagonal mediator and fatigue flow. And I wonder if there are pointers you might be able to offer from your experience regarding why you might choose to use one of these flows rather than another, and how pulses come into play here too. This may be a lot to go into, but thank you so much for whatever you feel happy to elaborate on. So, yes, I will be brief on this. I think two of the three flows you are mentioning are the same, fatigue flow and these are just different wordings Mary uses around the same subject. It's the mediator, which is another aspect of a sense of flow. Mediator closely related to third depth. When the mediation, when balancing this with that and that with this is no longer working, that starts causing fatigue. The special fatigue flow given in the Now Know Myself classes and whatever the names of those special classes are, Um, might address more specifically body-bound, conditions that haven't. I don't know. I think the easiest way for you to make an informed choice is just to see which one calls you more. The fatigue flow adjustment, or fatigue adjustment flow as it's called, the one with the diagonal mediator intermingling into it. It covers 3 pages. It's the same thing. It has different names over 3 pages. It's 17 steps long. So do you have time for the 17 steps? Do you want to do something shorter? That would be the main consideration. And pulses, I don't see pulses feeding into that very much. So that's the short answer for now. And the different delicate points that you go into, I may comment on next month if there's more that you would like me to elaborate on. But the key point, because you're bringing it up in the context of flow, is to check for all the points that you named, emotional reset, spiritual growth, whatever it is. It's a key topic of attachment that I've mentioned. 4th depth, when it loses its balance, has to do with needing to have my way. And, it is so easy to think, oh, I'm not like those people who always need to have their way and tell everybody else how to be. But when we've internalized that and say we have very stern, very strong spiritual beliefs, or we very faithfully adhere to a certain teaching, etc., etc., there can be so much of this in there, of being attached to the one right path because the masters have said so. So that's what I would check for. When something is fatiguing to me, that means that the level of exertion of body, of mind, of spirit that I put into whatever it is not balanced with the level of giving myself time off from it, giving myself time and space to rest my body, my mind, my spirit from it. So good intentions and discipline can be real big factors for deep, deep fatigue. I'll leave you with that for today. Thank you very much for your patience, everyone, of staying 10 minutes over time, and I will see you next month. Here, again, the info to sign up for my newsletters and find out about all my online offerings.